Okay, so we are back. So welcome to my presentation, Benefits of a Parent-Based Developmental Approach to Autism. So here's what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to tell you about why this approach improves quality of life for families affected by autism and their children. So this is something that benefits the entire family. I'm going to talk about the limitations of our current system as well. I want to make it very clear that everyone is, of course, making their own informed choices, but I do want people to understand that they do have a choice. And I want to share some new science with you that, when factored in, can really change the way we see autism and gives us a better way than our current approach. And I'm going to share a client story at the end with you. I have several, but this is one that really warms my heart. So let's dive right in. So, our current approach is a behavioral approach. And this is an approach that has been around for decades. And the goal is to minimize or extinguish difficult behavior and help the child build skills. This usually means that the child is driven to a therapist and parents are not involved in this. And a positive outcome is really associated with normalizing behavior. So it's not a problem for families and caregivers. So here are some of the challenges as I see them. We live in a society today that covets compliance, way too much, in my view. We're almost obsessed with compliance, and we hear about autism being a behavioral challenge. So we focus and focus and focus on the behavior aspect. And the problem with this is that children are labeled, parents are stigmatized, and through therapy, a child's emotional suffering really doesn't change, nor does their ability to self regulate, which is really critical. And the biggest concern I have is that parents are really left out of the equation, and therefore they remain feeling incompetent and dependent, and they really are not able to parent their child the way they want to. So, mom stress and PTSD are such a factor. There was a paper I read recently, somewhere in the vicinity of 20% of moms struggle with PTSD, and this is a big problem. So, mental health for caregivers really is an issue, and it just doesn't have to be this way. This is the most important person in the child's life, and we need moms to be at their best. This is an approach that really is on fixing deficits. So, we're almost looking at the child as though they need to be fixed. Families are being torn apart by stress associated with all kinds of aspects relating to autism, and parents are left feeling unsupported and dependent. It does not cultivate the child's unique potential. And trust me, our children have so much potential that goes untapped. And the goal is really seeking compliance, not trying to build relationships. And research has shown that at least the child must have a safe emotional relationship with at least one parent in order to have quality of life. So we need to put our emphasis on relationships before compliance. Now, I want to go into some really important neuroscience. I consider myself to be somewhat of a neuroscience geek, but this is so important in the big picture. So, even in children who do therapy, this does not reduce the stress associated with autism. And here's what we know now. In recent years, we've been hearing about the Polyvagal Theory, which was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. And this tells us so much important information about how we are biologically wired. Our body is wired for safety. We are always seeking safety in our environments. We know that our children's body and mind are wired differently. They literally feel the world differently than we do. Now, there is something called neuroception. So, this refers to the child's nervous system and how it perceives threat in the environment. So, what this means is that a child may be reacting to something that is causing their body to feel unsafe. And this is an involuntary system, okay? This is not something the child has control over. And so, this polyvagal theory really informs us that children's behaviors are adaptations to their environment. So we automatically assume that a child's behavior is intentional when that child may not be able to self regulate based on what's going on in their nervous system. The vagus nerve is a the biggest cranial nerve that innervates the digestive system, the heart rate, and many internal organs. And in children with autism, this vagal tone is somewhat dampened. And so this impacts digestion, social engagement, and many other systems. So the polyvagal theory is critical for us to understand and to factor in when we are considering treatment for our children. And here's the thing, folks, behavior is and always will be communication. Okay. We are human beings. We are emotional human beings, and we react to stress in our environment through our behavior. And this applies to you, me, and every one of us. And as I mentioned, our children experience the world differently. They process information differently. Their senses process the information coming in a different way. And so we cannot assume that their behavior is intentional because they struggle with so much stress and frustration and overwhelm. And I am shocked by how few parents are really given this important information. So, when a child is under a great deal of chronic stress, we know that stress is very bad for our bodies and our minds, but for a child, it impacts every different aspect of their life and can absolutely lead to trauma. There have been studies on what's called ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. And children with autism have very vulnerable nervous systems, and they are very prone to trauma. So if we do not address stress and try to slow down our pace of life and our schedule, we cannot expect our children to grow and develop, because it's not possible under such duress. Now let's talk about the mom for a second. Children need their moms and their dads too, but let's be honest, it's typically the mom who takes the lead. Moms are the most important people in any child's life, and the quality of life that they can experience is really dependent on having an attuned emotional relationship with at least one parent. And by attuned, I mean in sync. So we are really setting moms up in a very negative way by ignoring their capacity to learn how to become in sync with their child and learn how to parent so that they can enjoy quality of life. Moms are under so much stress and they are literally just told to step aside. They struggle with guilt and shame. Many moms I speak to, if not all, feel like they have literally failed their children and they internalize this. It causes just terrible stress and distress. So when a child is visiting, a professional after professional, the mom winds up feeling like she's relegated to being a chauffeur. That's the best thing she can do for her child. So she suffers from chronic stress, and often we know stress makes us sick, and relationships suffer, siblings suffer. And meanwhile, mom is no further ahead with her child. And of course, without tools to understand strategies to put into place and a real understanding of what's going on inside her child's mind and body, she struggles. And I'm sure you can relate to this. So when we believe our children's behavior is intentional, what happens? We get angry, we lose our temper, and a vicious cycle is created. We fall into the trap of using reward charts and all of these things that really don't work. And friction between parents is a real problem. Now, let's talk about the child for a second. So, our focus is really on doing things to the child rather than focusing on how we are with the child, how we are showing up and interacting with that child. So, the child is, yes, they are having, experiences, but we are not understanding what's going on in their mind and body and taking that into consideration. So their nervous systems are taxed. So if you see here the developmental iceberg, sorry, my photo is over the couple of words there, we react to what we see above the surface. And if you look at that iceberg, there's a lot going on beneath the surface. So many aspects, all of the child's developmental capacities are there. We know that development has been impacted. Autism being a neurodevelopmental challenge means that development has been thwarted. So our current approach does not take this into consideration. We are not factoring in their processing capacity. They have all kinds of internal bodily processes that are being impacted by stress. They struggle with the ability to focus, plan, and execute actions. All of the sensations that the child experiences, many of which may be, the child may struggle from sensory processing challenges, which can range from being mild to excruciating. And of course, emotional reactions, thoughts, and memories. And our children have very low self esteem. So we're not looking at the cause of the behavior and what we can do about it. And oh my goodness, there is so much we can do. So, as I said, behavior is always communication. So, the way I see behavior, it's the child is having a hard time, not giving you a hard time. And that's a real paradigm shift in how we're looking at things. I love this quote by Dr. Barry Prisant, who's the author of A Different Way of Being Human. There is no such thing as autistic behaviors. These are all human responses to a person's experience. So behavior is really an outward manifestation of what's going on internally in the mind and body. And how we perceive behavior literally influences how we react to it. When families who work with me get this, they have a massive aha, and they often feel really badly about how they are interacting with their child. But until we just do the best with what we have. But typical parenting does not work for our kids. Our kids are not typical, and there's a better way. Now, I'm going to talk to you first a little bit about why this developmental approach is so important. Because once we understand what's going on, we can make sense of it. We can learn how to support the building of a safe emotional relationship where the parent is not the cause of the child's distress. And this is so, so important. So I work with parents and I teach them the educational components of this, and then I support and guide them to learn and understand and implement in baby steps the ways that they can turn the ship around at home. So this supports emotional growth, physical health, and it is a family focused approach to building and furthering the child's development and their potential, which is there. Parents learn how to be great parents for their children, and this type of parenting is really good for any child. In my work, we address sensory processing issues, and behaviors are dramatically reduced, and parents feel more competent, less stress, and empowered. So, this really is thinking outside of the box. So, I start by resourcing and coaching and educating moms. And I'm saying moms, dads are always welcome in my work, but it's typically moms. So moms learn information that they're not going to be receiving from the vast majority of professionals. So why she's in such a difficult position, what's going on with her child. So she learns how to think through the lens of my child is having a hard time, and she learns how to guide her children's thoughts and actions. And so it all starts with having empathy and compassion for the child who is struggling. So this is a process. There is a curriculum that I follow. So, but it's all about small, manageable baby steps. So I love this. The best way to predict your future is to create it. And that's what I'm all about. So mom is given access to a curriculum that I have created. It's online training. We have group calls weekly, and she learns to implement skills over a period of time. So the skills build over time. And the goal is to establish an attuned emotional relationship with the child and to further the child's cognitive, social, and emotional development. We support the mom's nervous system. I am an EFT or tapping certified practitioner. And this is a tool, I liken it to my magic bullet. So I am able to reduce mom's stress through the use of emotional freedom techniques. Once it's learned, a child can learn how to use it as well, depending on the age and stage, of course. So we teach breathing exercises that really calm the body down. We learn about the importance of self-compassion. When we can be compassionate with ourselves, we can be more compassionate with others, and it really does improve relationships. And the end result of this is that, while we're reducing behavior, the emotional charge of events difficult events are reduced. And then mom is more resourced and can make different decisions. We also focus on self-care. You know, when mom goes down, the whole ship overturns. So self-care is critical. And when you're feeling really down on yourself and guilty and feeling shame, we're not in a position to be able to take care of ourselves. So we have to turn this around and support mom to take care of herself in a manageable way. So just by going for a 5 or 10 minute walk, nurturing herself and building in time for self-reflection. This does not have to be a time-consuming thing. There's companionship in group calls where they can learn or they can have access to other parents who are undergoing the same process and build relationships. And we help mom understand that our brains are negatively biased, and she learns to understand her thought habits and how she criticizes herself internally, and learns to regulate her emotions more successfully and impose boundaries at home with the rest of her family and ask for support, because too often we try to do it all ourselves. Now, once mom is resourced, understands, and has a handle on what's really going on here, learns to show up differently, the cool thing is the child responds in turn. So when we feel better and show up in a different way, our children respond to this because they're human beings, right? When we show up with different energy and with new skills and feel more resourced, we give our child a different energetic vibration, and we really do impact one another's energy. So we also support the child's nervous system. There's a program based on the Polyvagal Theory called the Safe and Sound Protocol, and I use this in my practice with many moms and also with many children. And what it does is it strengthens vagal tone. Really, what that means that it has a positive impact on how the child feels in their own body. It reduces their stress. It can have a really positive impact on sensory challenges, and it strengthens the social engagement system and regulation, and really calms the child's emotional state. It's a wonderful resource. So we are really supporting mom's nervous system and supporting the child's nervous system at the same time. And parents are taught to provide signals of safety to their child. So it doesn't matter what the child has done. When we punish, all we do is build resentment. So if we go back to that philosophy of the child having a hard time, not giving us a hard time, that nervous system needs safety. It needs compassion. And when we can show up with compassion, it supports our child to calm. So that this is how children learn to co-regulate and then self-regulate. And so when parents show up in this way, trust and love blossom, and it's beautiful. When a nervous system is calm and out of fight or flight or freeze, the social engagement system just naturally comes online. So children learn to enjoy reciprocal relationships, and an emotionally attuned relationship is formed. So parents learn to think about how they're showing up, how their actions and behaviors and communication are impacting their child. And so they become in sync emotionally. And this is where the magic really lies in terms of the child's development. It is a beautiful, powerful process to watch unfold. So I'm going to share a quick story of an amazing client, Sam and Fraser. And like I said, I work with many, many families, but this is just one story that really stands out for me. Sam and Fraser have two children. They did, Noah did some therapy that really didn't have the desired impact. And Sam was really struggling, as so many moms do, with mental health challenges herself. And their home was literally a battleground. So Sam was really, really afraid of working with me, as many moms do or feel at the beginning, because they doubt themselves. They do not feel that they are capable. So this really involves a leap of faith. But Sam trusted me. And she overcame so many negative thought habits and learned to really understand that children do well when they can. And she benefited so beautifully through EFT. It really, really changed things for her. And so she began to understand that when she showed up differently, her children were going to show up differently in response. And that's exactly what happens. And her son loves Batman. So we taught him what we called Batman breathing to self-regulate. So we can get creative with this based on a child's interests. So just a wonderful story. And to this day, Sam will say, I learned so much. I wish everyone could do this. And so do I. So today I've been talking to you about a developmental parent-based approach. And there is so much to this. There is a lot of neuroscience that our current approach absolutely disregards. So in my view, this approach supports the whole family. Okay, so rather than taking the child out of the family, we are supporting the entire family. And it's about how we are with the child, not what we are doing to them. So household stress is reduced, as is emotional chaos. We're able to improve the child's social and emotional growth and development. Self-esteem is dramatically improved, as is intrinsic motivation. So difficult behavior is dramatically reduced, and they're living in a much more peaceful environment, and mom's mental health, well-being, and feelings of competence skyrocket. And so this approach is not only in support of the whole family, but the whole family's mental health. And parents are definitively the most important people in their child's life. We know this now. It's time for us to be supporting the most important people for this child, which in turn supports the child. So I'd like to thank you so much for watching this presentation. I hope it has been incredibly helpful for you. Once again, I'm Sue Simmons, the founder of Equinox Family Consulting. Here's my contact information if you would like to reach out to me. We also have a free parent support group that is called Parents Navigating Autism. You can find it on Facebook and you can join. There is no charge. So thank you so much once again. This has been my great pleasure to be invited to participate in this speaker series. And I hope you are staying safe and being kind to yourself. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.